Can this free PC from Facebook Marketplace game? Well, not right from the start. It was missing a hard drive, RAM, and most importantly, a graphics card. But after some TLC, I got it up and running, and you'll be surprised at what it can do. With the increasing cost of the latest hardware, NVIDIA, not everyone can afford to upgrade or get into PC gaming, or can they? With a little patience and the proper expectations, you can find great deals on used hardware on sites like Facebook Marketplace or eBay. I found this PC on Facebook Marketplace listed for free with no specifications, so I snagged it up. It does have 4690K written on top of the motherboard I/O. That was a decent CPU for its time. I put in 16 gigabytes of RAM, a 240 gigabyte SATA SSD, and an RX 580. I went with the RX 580 because I had it on hand and it's a great pairing for this CPU. Anything more powerful would cause CPU bottlenecking. 240 gigabyte SATA SSD is pretty low. Usually I would recommend going with at least 500 gigabytes, but since this was a free computer and I just used a hard drive I had laying around, it'll do for now. You can always upgrade and add in more storage. After throwing in the new hardware and doing a little bit of cable management, this PC was starting to look pretty good. With a CPU that's 9 generations old and RAM that's 2 generations old at this point, you'll be impressed at what it can do. I started off with a personal favorite of mine, Red Dead Redemption 2. I ran the in-game benchmark at the settings it came preloaded with, which were balanced, and it did pretty good. It maintained above 60 frames per second most of the time. We did have a couple dips down into the high 40s in the busier areas of town, but overall I would say that this is a very playable experience. You could probably turn the settings down a little bit if you really wanted to hit that minimum 60 frames per second all of the time. He was able to get an overall average of 60 frames per second, so ran pretty well, I think. I also tested Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and it did really well, maintaining above 60 frames per second in the in-game benchmark. Got 66 frames per second at high preset settings at 1080p, so I'd definitely say that game is playable. Next up, I ran a Borderlands 3 benchmark, and it ran pretty well. However, there was some stuttering at the high preset levels, so I backed it down to medium, hoping that it would go away. We still experienced some stuttering, but not as bad. So overall, I would say I think that the game is playable, and we averaged over 70 frames per second at 1080p. Last, I ran a Assassin's Creed Odyssey benchmark. The gameplay footage didn't record very well, so I'm just showing you the results screen here, and we were able to get 63 frames per second on average at 1080p at medium graphics settings. It's got really great performance for an old PC. I'm really happy with it, and I think this will make a great 1080p build. If you enjoyed this video, check out my other video where I bring a computer case from 2006 back to life.